Jonathan.
Hey, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
You want me to sit here?
Yeah.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for joining me for this chat. And this is an audience that I think that you know you can relate to and that you're familiar with. So what are, to start with, what are some
It's a great turnout, Jonathan. This is incredible. So.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Yes.
You come from the tech industry, or perhaps you are most known for that, right? That you worked at Real Networks, and what are some of the things that during your tenure there, that as a successful executive there, that you still take away and still is something that you think about as it relates to this community and what you do in government?
Well, I'm just amazed every single day about how Seattle continues to grow as a center of vibrant technology development. Mm-hmm. And in the 90s, when I was involved at Real Networks and things were, the shocking, acquisition of SpryNet for, hundreds of millions of dollars, or I just saw Mark Cuban the other day, and we were talking about his use of Real Networks technology and everything that's happened, is that every year is still another surprising development about the growth of our region. And sometimes you get frustrated in the other Washington about the lack of pace of innovation. But when you think about it, here we are in this great era now with so much content online from an audio and video perspective. But it really was just 1995 when Real Networks introduced the first, basically that 14.4 dial-up sound of a streaming media. In fact, we used Al Gore because Al Gore was so monotone in his delivery that there was less packet loss, and so people probably don't know that, but the history of Real Networks, the first real-time streaming audio clip was literally Al Gore talking. So anyway, I get frustrated some days about the fact that I feel like we should be moving faster, and then you go online and you see how since 1995 until now, 2015, the huge transformation on online media content and what it has done, to change opinions, change lives, add input to everybody. So that's actually pretty fast when you think about it. So
yeah, that's right. And we're going to come back to some of those things in a minute in terms of the pace of innovation and how that could be sometimes not mesh with the other Washington. So what do you think are some of the top issues as it relates to technology that confront this industry? Is it issues around cybersecurity? Is it issues around IP? Privacy?
I always look at it because I see so much innovation out here today, and I think what hinders the innovation. So for me, when I was working in software, it was always about, can you find the workforce? Can you get them hired? Can you ship your product in a time that allows you to compete, because we're now in a global economy? So I think these issues of immigration and education are still front and center in the debates. Yes, we have to deal with these other issues, but I think making sure that we're skilling the workforce for tomorrow. I mean, me personally, I think we should have, I took Latin and typing when I was in high school as a requirement. I think everybody should have 1 year of programming as a requirement for high school. And it doesn't mean that you have to become a programmer, but if you're exposed to it just like I was exposed to typing, that we're all going to be better off by that. So I still think that education and allowing for a vibrant workforce here in the United States are key to us continuing to have the workforce that the entrepreneurs here in the audience need.
Yeah, that's right. That's good. So we're going to segue to a slightly different topic that I think that you can also relate to, which is that recently I made a public statement about how I will only move forward as an angel investor, investing in startups where there's at least one female co-founder or a female CEO, and I've been thinking a lot about how those kinds of issues in the workplace have progressed in the last few decades. Do you feel like that things have progressed pretty far with regards to women in executive positions, particularly in the tech industry, or do you think that we're moving too slow?
I think we need to move faster, that's for sure. And the question becomes, what can we do to incent more women to come into this field? And we see it at the K through 12 level of a lot more STEM education. That's great, that's fantastic. But I almost think that, I asked a Chinese visitor to my office once, why are there so many Chinese women engineers? And her response was, well, we have a saying in China, women hold up half the sky. And I thought, what a great statement that, that women were responsible for half, the economic success. It was something I think that they looked forward to. And an MIT graduate friend of mine who was involved in Microsoft for a long time said, well, Maria, don't you know there's no statues to women in the United States? And I started thinking about that. Every time I said, what's a statue to a woman? People always say the Statue of Liberty as if that's I'm looking for women who've had success in science, engineering, math, and technology, and where are we propping them up so that other young women can aspire to that? And I feel like that's what's still missing for us to really, I think our education systems are trying to reach out, but I think we need to do more.
Right. So if you were to perhaps motivate or activate this particular audience to try to move that needle forward, what might you say to the folks here?
Well, I think they need to see, I think other women need to see the women and they need to see what they're doing. I think that will inspire them more. I can't tell you how many men come up to me and say, can I introduce you to my daughter because I want her to see that our senator is a woman. And so it's the same thing. We need to show that there are women who are leading companies, that are driving policy changes in technology, that are working to invent great solutions, and that they're out there. And I know Melinda Gates had a forum on how to reduce infant and child mortality rates, and it was a award contest. And in going to that event, I saw how many more of the applicants were women. They liked that particular application. They could relate to it. They wanted to produce a solution. So I do think it's a little bit also about the types of interests that women might have that might be a little different than some of the technologies that are out there today. But I think seeing the women, seeing them thinking that they can do similar occupations is something that we just really have to figure out how to do that, how to put these women on the stage.
That's great, that's great. Certainly as Washington voters, many of us are very proud of your service for the state and for the country. I understand that about a year ago, I think, that you were the chairperson of the Committee for Entrepreneurship and Small Business, and currently you're also working on energy. And so perhaps tell us a little bit about your current work on the Committee of Energy. Yeah.
Well, I should just say on the Small Business Committee, the thing we learned, which we were shocked to find, that women's small businesses were only getting about 4% of the access to capital from traditional lending. So we were shocked. We couldn't believe that this was actually the number. But what we found is sometimes women wanted smaller amounts of capital access to. They had different business ideas, and so when they were presenting these to some people, as you can imagine, they might not have been as educated on some of the solutions that the women were proposing, maybe not. So we've tried to fix that. Now, in energy, we're trying to do something which is to help take the next step in empowering consumers on this energy revolution that's happening with distributed generation. If everybody can now get into the energy business, whether it's having a smart car and using that as battery storage or putting a solar panel on your roof, how do you make sure that consumers aren't overcharged or for connection fees, or how they participate in lowering their own energy costs with the new advent of new solutions in clean energy and things like smart grid technology?
I see. That's great. Do you? I'm curious to know. What are the things that you do in your household to conserve energy?
Well, obviously, being in back and forth across the continent a lot, you basically try to keep your energy usage low and being able to make sure that you're keeping it low. But I think the key thing is also trying to help in the transformation off of fossil fuels onto other energy sources. And so I've had a biodiesel car for a while and experimenting with that. But what I think is now with so many companies in our state focusing on how to develop a smart grid and how to move energy around more efficiently, we're calling for a energy efficiency resource standard. And that would be to say at a national level, utility companies should try to reduce their energy production as opposed to just that the cost of saving an electron is 1/3 the cost of producing an electron. So this is where California has made a lot of great savings in reducing their energy just by coming up with smart ways. Our laboratories here in the Pacific Northwest came up with a study out on the Olympic Peninsula that showed that just by changing some consumer behavior on appliances and changing those appliances, that you could have double-digit savings in your energy use. So those are real savings to the consumer, and those are the kinds of things that we think a more progressive energy bill would do for the United States. And I think because we're a little bit of marriage of cheap hydro and smart computing, we've had a lot of these companies develop here in the Northwest, and we want to see more of them continue.
That's great, that's great. Now, of course, I would be remiss. As you know, that this is an audience, most tech people are very, very politically conscious, and they keep up on the news and the campaign. I would be very remiss if I didn't actually ask you for some of your views on the current campaign, and perhaps I'll put a fine point on the question, which is that what might you do differently or the same as Secretary Clinton if you were able to influence her campaign?
Well, I think she has to respond more rapidly. I think this is the age that we live in, and I'm sure that's a challenge. We, in our office, even though we're not the most populous state, have the highest percentage of what is, electronic mail to our office. So we communicate with more people on electronic mail than any other state. So we are proud of that because our constituents know how to communicate that way, and obviously no one wants to send snail mail, which takes forever and has to go through all these security things. So I think what any campaign today should be doing is trying to build out that network of instant communication, because that's the era that we live in. It seems strange, right, to think about, Nixon's 5 o'clock shadow and how in a TV age that was so detrimental. Well, I think in this information age, if you're not going to respond rapidly to things, it's going to be a challenge for you as a presidential candidate. And so I think that's what any candidate has to learn how to do, because we just live in such a more connected space and time.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. That's a great response. And I see that we only have a couple of minutes left, but is there any, I know time goes fast when you're having fun. So are there any last remarks that you would like to communicate to this audience?
Well, I would just say I know that there's big news today about cyber and this T-Mobile situation, and I know that the FBI and other people are in part of an investigation on that. And we just had this visit from the Chinese president and a cyber agreement which will help move towards saying that business attacks, the kind of attacks that might come on U.S. soil against businesses and stealing of intellectual property, that the Chinese are going to pursue that. Now that's a first for them saying they're going to pursue that. We have to hold them to it, and we have to see. But we need to move forward on an international regime on cybersecurity. But I also want us to look at China as an incredible market. Just on that issue I mentioned, energy efficiency. Their market opportunity is something like $2.4 trillion. That's how much energy efficiency could be a winning solution. They right now are in the stage of development like buildings and things of that nature where they're very inefficient, and again, the kind of technology solutions we produce would be a big economic opportunity for the future. So I hope that the Northwest will continue to innovate in that area.
That's great. That's fantastic. Senator, I want to give you my heartfelt appreciation for not only taking time away from your busy schedule to meet with us, but also being so intellectually agile to be able to, sort of go with the flow in terms of how we're doing this today. So I really appreciate it.
I just want to say, I know that I come from just being in DC, and I like to say, in that Washington, they like to regulate, but in our Washington, we like to innovate. So thank you for continuing to innovate. And Jonathan, thank you for GeekWire and for another fantastic conference.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, great job.
Cheers.